we have built our lives to actually stop short of reaching rest. We settle too quickly for whatever we come across. And he goes into the house where Professor Slughorn is hiding, and Dumbledore, with one wave of his wand, cleans the whole house. So that is my favorite spell.
Today I'm talking to Kelly Adkins, wife of Pastor Mike and experience director at Grace Church in Orlando, Florida. If you're anything like me, you've probably found yourself sitting on the couch, mindlessly scrolling, trying to find peace, and in the end you just feel worse. Kelly is going to give us an amazing definition of rest today, one I've never heard before. And she tells us why you should stop trying to find balance in life and do this instead. I'm Jeanne Harrison, and this is Grace After Hours. We're talking today about rest. Mm-hmm. It's funny, I was just talking to someone recently, and he made the comment that to him, rest feels kind of like a churchy word. And I was like, really? I'd never thought that before. But he's like, I feel like church leaders are always saying, you should rest, make time for rest. And he was like, I don't really know exactly what that means, and I don't know if I'm doing it. So before we even get into rest, how would you define it for someone who's like, what do you mean by rest? Make sure you're resting.
I think rest is learning to know yourself so that you choose activities and rest that make you more like yourself. Rest is something that at the end of it, you are more of who you are and more of who God made you to be than when you started. Because I think we have built our lives to actually stop short of reaching rest. We settle too quickly for whatever we come across, for what scrolls by, for what distracts us. We settle for just plopping down and seeing what's on the TV. We take the first thing that feels like rest because our minds and our bodies were created for rest. It's such an intention from God at the beginning. It was right in the creation story. Right. Rest happens regularly. We were made for it, and so our body's totally looking for it. And so I think our society has trained us to find it in, social media, addictions, wasting time. Some people find rest in control. Trying to control their situation. They think that brings them rest. But I think we just stop short of going all the way there for what our soul really needs.
Yes.
And so I think really the process of getting to know yourself over time is really what helps you choose rest and choose it well. In the situations in the seasons that you don't have a lot of time to rest. I wish I could go back to the times when I had small kids and see, okay, well, I have this window, but I needed to devote it to this and to not to this.
More intentional.
I need to be more intentional about what I'm doing because the things I thought were bringing me rest were not.
Like what kinds of things?
You mean what kinds of things weren't bringing me rest?
Were not bringing you rest that you thought?
I feel like there was maybe striving for a certain level of order in my life that was not bringing me rest. I am an ordered person. I do appreciate my space. That's something I've learned about myself over time. Being in a general kind of order, but I think that I pursued a lot of things that other people cared about that I really didn't care about. I made things matter to me. That were not important to me because I was worried about what other people thought. So that's one thing. I think I tend to be a news junkie, actually.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, kind of a politics junkie. I think a lot of people are very...
A politics?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, very surprised to hear that about me.
Yeah.
And so I would tend to go into these spaces and think... oh, well, this is just what I'm interested in. This is what I'm going to read about. This is what I'm going to be focused on. And I really like it. So it's going to be a good thing for me on the other side. And it just kind of never is. It's not restful for me.
So you've defined rest. Can you define distraction then? You're kind of saying examples, but how would you define distraction as opposed to rest?
I think our world is based on distraction right now, honestly. I think the things that we watch, the things that we even read, the things that we listen to, the grocery stores we visit, the entire economy is based on its ability to distract you and to hold your attention. And so all of the social media, even shopping, Amazon, some big distractions for me, but even sometimes things that we think are good things, like things about our health, or you know, I'm on Facebook because I like to connect with my family. They can become big distractions because that's what they're designed to do.
Maybe it's like anything that temporarily plugs that ache or something, and 100%. It's just like momentary, but then when it's done, you feel even more. But how do you balance that? Because we obviously have to intake some information. We can't just not ever, look at anything. But then how do you set boundaries to where it doesn't consume you and now you spent 10 hours online instead of resting?
I think, again, the intentionality is the important part. I think I can decide one day that, what I really like to do is look at beautiful homes on Instagram.
Right.
And so I'm actually going to sit down and for 30 minutes, I'm going to engage in that because that does bring me rest, and I really
feel refreshed.
I really
from
do
it.
like that. So it's really refreshing for me. I see
Okay.
creative ideas. I see beautiful spaces. It's something that's interesting to me. But if I sit down and just open it and let it go where it takes me, that's where I often end up wasting my time, but also in a restless place. I feel like our world also is, it's taught us, or it's trying to teach us all the time, that more information is better. We have the world at our fingertips. We have the world in our hands, everything you can possibly know. And so I read something the other day that was talking about how back in the 20s, back in the 30s, economists would give speeches and they would say, okay, all the time in the world is going to be available to us because we're going to have this machine and that machine. And and we're going to have, washers and dryers.
It's like the
and
Disney thing with the carousel.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to make us so much better, and we're going to have so much more time to devote to other pursuits, so much more time to devote to our soul and become better human beings. But I think all those things do is they just bump the standards of life. The particular example he was talking about was, women before, they didn't have washing machines. They had to do laundry by hand, and they only had time to do it one day a week. But once you had a washing machine, it was possible to have clean clothes every day. And so because it becomes possible, it becomes a requirement. We put that on our soul, we lay that on our heart and say, because I can do this, I should do this.
I should do everything.
And so that's why we're not more rested. We keep adding information. We keep pulling things in. This is the way my fridge should look. This is the way my life should look. These are the ways my planner should look. My goals should look. My career should look. And I'm not saying any one of those things aren't true. But I think a mature life is getting to a place where you say, this thing, and this thing are my things. And I'm not going to worry about these other things. It's okay to lay that down. It's okay that this doesn't look just like that. Or that I don't, live like my neighbor or like the girl sitting next to me at church, because God's called me to be a unique human being with unique things to bring to the world.
Okay, so I have a great question for you, but first, pull your mic a little closer to you, if you don't mind, because I want everyone to hear your profound wisdom. You just have to adjust it a little.
Okay.
Is it good? Okay.
Yep, I guess so.
Okay.
They'll let me know.
They'll let us know if it's good. One of my favorite things you posted about on social media, you talked about quit trying to balance everything in your life and look for a thread of purpose. And you said if you can find that thread, then you'll always be working towards your one thing.
Right.
And when I read it, I was like, yes, this is what I need. But also like, what is that?
Right.
What is that? Can you make it practical for me? Like, what does it look like for you to find that one thing so that you have the freedom to say, I don't have to be all these things. This is who I am.
I think the easy answer for, the average Christian person is you're going to be saying that your one thread is Jesus and your one purpose is living a life for Christ. And I think to an extent that is true for me. It's true for Mike. One of the things that we've always done is it's not like kids and friends and
like categories,
career and job. It's all the same. It's all the same life, and we're inviting our kids into it, and we're inviting our friends into it to be a part of it, so that all the time we're pursuing sort of oneness with Christ, becoming more like Christ. So I think the more that you can kind of treat the pieces of your life as not something like, okay, I'm just trying to, I got to spend this much time here and I got to spend that much time there. But seeing yourself as being shaped and formed into the image of Christ through all of the things that you do, I think it brings it into kind of a harmonious whole and doesn't really feel like things are competing for your attention, but rather God is using all of the pieces to do this one thing in you, to make you Jeanne, to make me Kelly, as he dreamed us up to be.
Like it's all sacred in a way. Like it's not more valuable me sitting here doing this than when I'm doing dishes and screaming at kids to do the homework and like all that kind of. There's something there too that's making me who I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Maybe I can lower the bar and just say all of this is sacred and there's something beautiful about all of this.
Yes. And I don't even really think that's lowering the bar. I think that's raising the other things.
Elevating.
I think that's elevating
all of it.
The normal parts of life into things that God wants to use. And I'm not really honestly terribly good at this all the time. I think I have better success in some days than the others. But I am learning to stop and say, even in the smallest distractions and the smallest failures and the smallest, this didn't go the way I thought, that God has intention in those things. It's actually a lesson I started learning in high school, believe it or not. So it has obviously taken a very long time. But I shared a locker with a girl at school. I had just moved to Orlando. I just transferred to Edgewater High School.
Okay.
And I met a girl there who was a Christian. And she and I shared a locker, and we would trade a notebook through the day. Like she would write in a notebook, leave it in the locker, and I would pull it out and write it in the next time and leave it in the locker. So we'd just write notes to each other all day. We weren't obviously learning very much, but but one day we said we were going to go to the beach after school. I had not been to the beach yet. I just moved here. I didn't know that kind of a beach culture. And she's like, I'm going to take you to the beach. I'm going to take you to my favorite place. But probably at about 1 o'clock, as it often does here in Florida, it started to pour. And so I wrote her a long note about how disappointed I was and how basically bitter I was that I was not going to get to go to the beach like we planned. And I put the note in the locker, and she wrote back, and she said something I will never forget. And she said, I'm actually excited it's raining today, and it changed our plans because I love to feel important. And she saw that circumstance in her life was God moving her life in a way, in a different direction that would be better for her, that would be a more positive path for her, even if it meant she couldn't do what she wanted to do.
And she saw it as being important?
And she saw it as being important to God, that the circumstance would change and prevent her from doing something that she wanted to do. And I remember in our high school way, she had written it in pink and outlined it in hearts. I love to feel important. And that's been something I've been trying to learn for 30 years.
Yes.
Since then, because I, set things in my mind. I get ideas about the way they should go. But God loves me, and He believes that I'm important.
It's such a different
path.
perspective, because I feel like I would read that as like, oh, I'm so unimportant to God. He let it rain. You know what I mean? Like, if only I mattered, then He would let my plans go the way. But you kind of say that, like, one of my favorite things, you wrote about this in the Grace magazine. You said, rest is one of the best ways we can say, I love you, God, because it says, I trust you, God. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, that really is it. There's something about me thinking I can never stop. I have to just... that I think people almost like humble brag about, like, I just don't have time to rest. I'm so busy, which me too. I say, like, Clint, I can't sit and do this because I'm doing all these other things. And it is a form of pride that God isn't trustworthy to handle this stuff. And you even said in your article something about, like, put your hand on your heart, try this, like, put your hand on your heart and say to yourself this mantra. I went back to look. I was like, what is that? I was like, I need to say it. I've done everything I can do. God's got this, basically, here, Yeah. I think that's so powerful, but.
Yeah, I have lived many years that way, believing that I was so important that I could not be spared or lie down. And that's just a soul-crushing way to live. And it's not because you're so busy, and it's not because you don't have time, and it's not because you don't even get any rest. It's because you don't have the proper thoughts about God in your mind. It's because you don't have the trust that you need. It's because you don't see God as a loving God, a compassionate God, a God who has kindness in His face toward you, versus I'm trying to prove something to Him, about what a great find I am as a follower, or, what a hero I can be in my life and my situation.
I have a beach story too, actually, that I thought of when you were saying yours. So I've told you about this, but I started struggling with anxiety attacks about like a year ago. Okay. So one weekend, Clint and I went to the beach, and I was working through this counseling book that challenged you for one whole day to write all your negative thoughts and then try to find a theme in them. So I was doing this, and
how awful!
Yeah, it was a heavy assignment. I sat and I did it all, and the word that I came up with, I asked God to give me a word, but the word I came up with was powerless. And I told God, I just feel powerless over all these circumstances, like these things that I can't control with my kids that make me anxious, and even powerless to even break out of this anxiety, like I'll never change. And then the very next day, we're laying out on the beach, and the hotel offered free paddle boarding. And Clint was like, let's go out and do it. And I was like, oh, I did it for like an hour. And I remember looking out at like the whole ocean in front of me. And it was just, and I told God in that moment, I was like, only one word. I thought, I feel so powerful. And I was like, God, I felt like I was like Wonder Woman. I was like, I did it. I did something I've never done. Maybe there are sharks. I don't care. I'm doing this. And it's like He said to me, my power is in you. You're not powerless. And it's kind of like your friend spinning the narrative, like, no, this is not that God doesn't see me, that I am powerful. And I feel like those are the things you talk about, like rest being these deep breaths of like, whew, I felt that in that moment. It like got me out of my own head, maybe, instead of just, this is my life, always anxious. I felt like an exhale.
Yes.
And I think I want to bring more of that into, I can't always grab a paddleboard, like, see you kids, I'm just going to go in the middle of like dinner's burning, everybody's freaking out, homework, stress. How do I ground myself with some of that, like, every day? If you were just to be really practical, what are things you do that are like quick and just grounding, restful things?
I think some of the most important things that I do when I choose rest now is I involve all of my senses.
Yes.
I think that is something that I've learned over the years, that if I am going to sit down and read a book, or even if I'm going to sit down and watch a show, which is kind of rare for me, but or even if I'm going to sit down and do a little work that doesn't feel urgent or whatever, that's more creative. I don't ever do that without like a whole situation going on.
You create a whole atmosphere.
I mean,
or something?
Actually, this started when Mike and I drove down to Palm Beach once for a conference, and we were staying in someone's home, and they were not there. It's beautiful, beautiful home, like the most beautiful home I've ever been in. But I was walking in the door of her home and thinking like, oh, this place is so great. I'll never have any place like this. It's unbelievable. But they weren't there, and they had left a sign on the door that we saw, welcome Mike and Kelly. And we walked in, and there was jazz music playing, and all of her little, like fake candles were lit for us. And we had just had a hard trip, and I think Mike and I probably even argued on the way.
Sure. And
then I felt so jealous of this thing, but I walked in and I'm like, what a moment of peace. Like, it was probably the most peaceful moment I've ever felt in my life. And I'm like, you know what? I can do this. I can turn on music. I can light some candles. I can make things visually around me pleasing. And bring rest to my soul through just small little things. And so I rarely sit down to do the things that I enjoy without kind of bringing this sort of full senses approach to it. What I'm listening to, what I'm seeing, what I'm smelling, what I'm tasting. Like, it's just all happening at that time. So that's really one thing that I do. Another thing that I do is that I've really worked to figure out what is restful for me. Unlike a lot of people, TV, not restful for me. I can watch one show, but at the end of two shows, I feel depressed. And I feel like
I don't have that.
No, a lot of people don't have that problem. But for me, it is a problem. For Mike, it's not a problem.
Right.
But for me, it is a problem. So it's not something that I can do, because at the end, it's going to make me restless, not rested. And so I really learned myself and okay, this is what fills me up. This is what makes it work. Even if it's only a 30-minute window, I can get there pretty quickly, and I can come away singing like, that was a good experience for my soul. That made me better versus worse. That made me more content versus less. That made me more focused instead of distracted.
Speaking of the sensory thing, you're not going to like this. Okay, remember I told you about my shakti mat?
Yes. Are you still using it?
I am using it every single day. I'm not even joking.
That thing looks so painful.
It's like a bed of nails. It's like an acupuncture mat. And it has a little pillow. I got Clint to try it once. The first 10 minutes was like, oh, this is terrible. He's like, why do you like this? This is torture. And then, I'm not even joking, Kelly, minute 11, he was like, asleep for like an hour.
I heard that.
I woke him up. I was like, sweetie, it's bedtime. Like, I'm going to bed. You can't sleep all night on it. Actually, the worst part is getting off of it. When you get off, you're like, oh, it's like really intense. But here's what I love about it. I really do it every day. It's so sensory that you can't like scroll on a phone. You can't, because it would be painful to like move. So basically, all I do, I either meditate, like my counselor's teaching me, or I pray, or I thank God. I just make it time of gratitude. And it's like my brain has been trained, because every day I'll think like, I think it's time for my shakti mat. I'll be like, it's time for it kind of annoyed me for a while, because after Clint did it that one time, I would sometimes be like, where's my shakti mat? And he'd be in the corner. Like, get out, shakti mat. What are you doing? This is my shakti mat. But it is like something about it is, I think it's really the fact that I can't think about anything. My brain goes, this is time to be still. And you're going to be totally still for 30 minutes, 20 minutes. But I actually really look forward to it. Every day I have a little bit of shakti mat time.
That's one so of my awesome.
You should try it. It's like being impaled on a bed of nails.
It sounds great. It sounds really like something Mike would buy and do it just because.
Yes. If you buy it, don't let Mike.
Like, he would do it on purpose because it felt bad. And that's just good for you.
Mike would totally steal it from you if you did it 100%.
Yeah. No, I actually... been doing a little research on things like that and how we're so desperate as a culture to feel.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're so starved for focus.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That it's probably doing both things. It's helping you. It's helping you feel, and it's helping you focus, because that's all you can think about is the thing.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It clears my mind. It's the only thing I can focus on. And then it actually feels a little bit like being buzzed, because I think it's a blood flow thing. It like
I wouldn't
get all
know, Jeanne,
like
what that feels like.
Okay, listen, I have some rapid fire questions for you. Are
Oh
you
my
ready
gosh.
for this? Okay.
No, I'm not.
What is Pastor Mike's ick?
Right now, I think it's evolved over the years, but right now, my ick for Pastor Mike is that because of the workouts, he drinks like 3 or 4 protein shakes or some things like that a day, and he just leaves the glasses everywhere.
Oh, I knew
they're
you were going to say
on the floor.
Yes.
They're by the bed.
Yes.
They're in the shower.
Ick. Ick, Pastor Mike.
Yes, ick Pastor Mike. That is my number one ick right now.
Okay, what is one thing you adore about Pastor Mike?
Oh my gosh, like so many things. I think the number one thing I adore about Mike is that he is not content to be the same, and he is genuinely trying to improve himself in a thoughtful way all the time. It's not even like a driven psycho way. He will find something that he doesn't like about himself, or someone else will say something to him that like, hey, you need to work on this. And if he can see that and he can assess that, he'll go to town. He will work on it.
Yeah.
He will not just go, well, that's who I am, or I don't want to hear that negative thing. He'll be like, yep, let's weed that out. So he'll actually put into practice ways to change. He's an active changer. That is my favorite thing about him.
Okay, you're a big Harry Potter fan.
Oh, yes.
What's your favorite spell?
Oh, my goodness. My favorite spell is one that there was no word for at all, and it was in it's the 6th movie, and he goes into the house where Professor Slughorn is hiding, and Dumbledore, with one wave of his wand, cleans the whole house. So that is my favorite spell.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
I would take that spell, right?
Yeah.
That makes me think of Sleeping Beauty when they do the magic and they just like...
everything just comes
Mary
back
Poppins.
together. And,
you and I are cut from the same cloth. Okay, favorite Disney theme park?
Oh, Epcot.
Epcot. Is there a ride or something, experience that you
No,
love?
I just think to me it feels the most relaxing to just walk around. I mean, we're locals, so we don't go.
Yeah, you go for the ambiance, not just
trudge through the parks the whole day and like get everything done. I'm not really worried that I can't ride X or Z this time because why did I skip Y? X or Z?
X, Y, Z.
X, Y, or Z, because I'm going to come back the next time. So I think that for me, that's the park that just feels most relaxing to just hang out in.
Perfect bite of breakfast.
Oh gosh. I love breakfast. It's definitely the best meal. A perfect bite of breakfast would be like an over easy egg on toast with a little bit of tomato.
Oh, I thought you were going to add something sweet. No,
No, I don't like sweet breakfast.
Oh. Yeah. You have the day to yourself. Where are you going? What are you doing?
Oh, well, I mean, number one choice, being in my house by myself.
Oh, hands down. I agree.
In the house by yourself.
On your shakti mat. I'll buy one for you.
A win. But if I'm going to go somewhere, I probably would go, I'm kind of like it's half the reason I like Harry Potter is like that kind of like that old vibe. So if I could choose anywhere, it would be like old library, antique shop, something like that. That's where I'm going.
I'm with you on the library. Thanks for talking to me, Kelly. It's been great having you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Grace After Hours is a production of Grace Church in Orlando, Florida. Grace's mission is helping people take their next step toward Christ. Learn more at discovergrace.com. If you enjoy this podcast, share it with someone you know. And subscribe so you never miss an episode.